supposedly we're live.
That's
Give it a minute, it'll catch itself up.
Oh yeah.
Supposedly we're live. I don't know how true that is. Mind you, I learned how to create things. I didn't stop to make sure that it actually
yeah,
worked.
we're live.
Oh yes, okay.
Yes. We're live.
All right,
All right.
Franz.
I told you I'm more comfortable with a written word than spoken.
It's okay. It's all good.
I appreciate you being here and getting out of your comfort zone.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for
Andy's
inviting me.
here. Okay, so I'm gonna let you get us started, Master of Games.
I guess. Good morning, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome. Thank you, Squidzy, for giving me the channel and the medium to share for TTRPG brunch this morning. Um, my name's Craig. He, him pronouns. Tezrak on Twitch. Tezrak just about anywhere that you can find me. Um, and we are going to be. I'm going to be kicking us off with my game/system. The game is called Shadowlight. The system is called Persona. Um, I like to say that the two of them exist on, depending on whose table it is and where you're playing. Shadowlight and Persona exist on two different points of a Mobius strip. They can either be literally right next to each other, or they could be so far apart that you can't tell that you're using one or the other. Um, you could just as easily be in the Shadowlight mindset while playing D&D or while playing Apocalypse World. Um, it is both a setting and a setting guide. There is an in-universe component, but I won't say too much about that yet because it might come up in the game. Um, so it is a setting. It's a setting guide. It's a supplement, kind of all rolled into one. Um, and really, the thrust of it that I've always wanted it to accomplish is to make it feel like you're watching classic episodes of The Twilight Zone. Every episode of The Twilight Zone fit into a different setting, into a different time period, into it. It could be past, present, future. It could be far future. It could, from the perspective of a television writer in the 1960s. What looked like far future could be rocket ships and aliens. It could be the Old West, like we've decided in advance that today our Shadowlight game is going to be Western in flavor and theme. Uh, so it can accomplish quite a bit, but it's really intended to emphasize mystery and exploration and uncovering truths. Um, And like I said, you can either use that with Persona. So Persona is a universal role playing system, or it's intended to be, very much like GURPS or Fate or games like that, systems like that, where you can take the system and you can make it do whatever you want it to do. Um, but the other side of the coin of that is that part of the meta setting of Shadowlight is that there is a what's called an omniverse, like a collection of all possible universes. So every table that's playing a Shadowlight game is effectively what's called a monad, or a discrete individual universe. That one of the big truths of Shadowlight is that they all work play by the same rules, and the same rules are Persona, but they may look a lot like Persona, or they may only vaguely resemble it. So it's meant to be highly flexible, highly modular. Take from it what you need to take from it. Take the rules, mix them, remix them, completely throw them out the window. Whatever you want to do, as long as the themes of the game are helping you to play your game and to support rewarding role playing experiences. So thank you all for coming today. And again, thank you, Squizzy, for hosting and moderating and providing the medium. So I don't know how much everybody had an opportunity to look at things in advance, but in not, it's okay. We kind of all decided ahead of time, like I said, that the game that we will be playing will be Western in theme. It's not necessarily going to be set in the real world, or it's going to be set in what might resemble a sleepy logging village in a mountain valley pass, uh, surrounded by thick, lush forest that was discovered and established for the purposes of logging, and there's plenty of waterway which allows uh, the logging to make its way to a bigger city further south that is shrouded in mystery, in more ways than one. But effectively, kind of the vibe that I'm going for is uh, industrial steam, little to no electricity, but it's all weird. And not everybody might look like your typical human, and some people might throw around magic, and yeah. So it's Western in vibe, but make it weird.
Yes.
Okay.
Do we want to do introductions around the table?
Sure. I'll let you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves.
I'll go last.
Okay. So I want to start with Ron.
Hi, I'm Franz, Planes of Fate on Twitch, and my pronouns are he, him, uh, and that's basically it. I'm a writer, so that's what I do.
Okay, we're both looking to see who's gonna be next. I'll go. My name's Ellis Miller, but my name is on all my socials and everything else. It's Dungeon Bits. I make TTRPG stuff, mainly D&D. I make YouTube videos and the like, and I'm also here just to be very much interested in the Shadowlight and Persona sort of system when I saw it and all that. So to get to be here and to play it is really cool. But yeah, you can follow me if you want. If not, that's totally cool. I'm just here. And my pronouns are he, him. Yeah.
So now I'm going to make a fool of myself and try to speak in English. So my name is Patrick Dubuc. I'm from Big Bite Games on Twitter. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a creator slash designer for TTRPGs. I've been meddling into the business for quite a while now, almost 10 years, but many unsuccessful attempts with the big companies, unfortunately in the past. So basically, I decided to take my fate in my own hands and make my own. So that's where I am today, and I'm pretty happy to be here. And I want to take that time that I have the microphone on to wish Squidzy a happy birthday.
Yeah.
There it is.
That's what I was waiting for. I actually expected it from Franz, really. But thank
done.
you. Yes. They had no idea until I told them yesterday that we were doing this on my birthday.
That was your mistake in telling.
I know it was my mistake, but it was that my best friend's gonna like blast me all over social media later, so I had to say something.
Ah.
So I'm Squidzy. I've got so many things. I help design games over at Lost Guide Games. Right now we are working on Long Watch. Grim and Mimi are working on Long Watch, and then we are also busting ass on Neon Shadows, hopefully for a next year release. But I also stream, and this is what I do. So, welcome.
Hooray. Thank you all for being here. Quick rundown of I have been working on Persona and Shadowlight as the lead, basically since about 2007. It was the earliest I could find a document in my Google Drive that looked like what it started out as. So it's been in development on and off for the last 15 years. the gaming group that I belong to in New Jersey, we were starting to work on our own fantasy heartbreaker, basically. And so it started out as a setting for D&D, and then we said, well, if we're making the setting, then why are we using somebody else's rules? We might as well come up with our own rules. And then, well, if we have these rules and we're playing fantasy, um, I grew up on Transformers and Star Wars and Thundercats and all these 80s properties, He-Man, Masters of the Universe, all these properties that said there is no difference. There are worlds that have magic and high tech rolled into one, chocolate and peanut butter in perfect harmony with each other. And so why do these games have to be just sword and sorcery? Like I want spaceships, I want lasers, I want aliens, I want it all. So then it became, so it's evolved and it's become, now it's, your setting can be just one thing. It can just be fantasy, it can just be sci-fi. All of the materials for the game are available, pay what you want, um, under Creative Commons license on my itch page. And the pre-generated characters that I provided are very much fit into that mindset. There's a set of pre-generated characters that are sci-fi. There's a pre-generated character set that is all fantasy, and I could keep going. I could, and it could be as true to a particular genre as you want it to be. In this case, it's not. Today's game in part 2 is very much not going to be, but it can be as much as close to that as you want it to be. So that's kind of the very brief overview history. I'm definitely, while I've taken the lead and I consider myself the author, there are a number of individuals over the years who have contributed, and I can't say that it's all been me. There's been tons and tons and tons of playtesting that's already been done prior to me taking this off the shelf back in July of this year and dusting it off and saying I finally want it to be a finished product. So it's a much longer story than we have time for. Everybody has time for, but if anybody's willing to hear it, I'll tell it someday. Anyway, that's the overview of the game, the history of the game from an outer game perspective. I've been playing role-playing games for over 30 years. Since middle school, I started with the red box basic D&D and have played a ton of different games, both big names, Wizards of the Coast, Paizo, White Wolf, down to the indie boom in the early 2000s and 2010s, all the Powered by the Apocalypse and Dogs in the Vineyard and Sorcerer and so on and so forth. So Shadowlight and Persona are just as much informed by the big RPGs, the trad RPGs, the indie RPGs, the story games, etc. As you can imagine. Before we go any further, I think it's probably a good time to talk about safety tools. I'm a big proponent and feel it's very important to make sure that everybody feels safe and everybody feels like they don't have to be exposed without their consent to content that they aren't comfortable with. So in the SRD for Persona, I mentioned 2. I mentioned the X card and I mentioned script change, but Lines and Veils is another popular one as well. But ultimately, at this point, is there any kind of content that we want to avoid or we want to, fade to black on or anything along those lines? I personally don't. I don't have any myself.
Well, if I can take the lead here, I would like to only specify one thing I'm not comfortable with. It's a graphical description of corpses. I'm not really comfortable with it.
Okay.
It can be implied. I don't have any problems with that. I just don't want any specific descriptions. I'm not comfortable with that.
Copy that. Thank you.
No, just nothing
Okay
against,
with anything.
just nothing against TOS. So no major sex descriptions or anything like that.
Okay. Brands?
I'm good. Anything you
Okay.
already said, it's good for me. Your boundaries are perfectly fine by me.
Cool. All right. So, I'm still trying to kind of wrap my brain around how to introduce the game to people who've never played it before. Where do we start from? I mean, I've already touched on what we all decided upon in advance, which is what it's going to be the theme of the game of the this one shot. I suppose that I can maybe jump into. Bear with me a second. I'm gonna pull up. I made a PowerPoint deck for the character sheet, and maybe that's a good place to start from.
Yep, screen's all ready for you to share. So.
Thank you.
Oh, here we go.
All right.
It's Dreamception.
So what I've done is I've basically cut out each section of the character sheet in order to highlight not just what goes where, but also for it to be kind of a flow, so that the process of making a character makes a little bit more sense. Effectively, where it starts from is at the top, kind of the top middle, I guess you could say. So the first thing that we would decide as a group would be what we want our overall kind of power level to be. And we would do that by determining so it's kind of a yin yang type of thing. One informs the other and vice versa. So we would decide how many creation points we would start with. So if we started with 5 creation points, the characters would have a starting potential of 1. So what potential means is potential informs other things as we go. It's kind of a quick benchmark to say a character of potential 1 versus a character of potential 5. That character of potential 5 is going to be much more capable and have a lot more things in their bag of tricks than that potential 1 character. So the first thing, like I said, we would start with, by default, characters begin play with a starting potential of 1, but we don't have to start there. If we feel like since everybody's learning and everybody's doing this for the first time, maybe that would be a good place to start. That's fine. It's just that basically you just don't have that many points to throw around amongst your attributes. So if we did, let's see, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, no, 6. If we did 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, that would be my brain is not helping with math today. If we did 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, that would be 20 points. That would be a potential 4 character. That, you know, so I don't know what everybody's thoughts are on that. If we did 2, that would be 10 points. But basically, what we're going to do is we're going to take the creation points and we're going to allot them to our attributes.
Okay.
So there are 6 attributes: competence, cunning, power, prowess, knowledge, and stature. Attributes serve two functions in the default version of Persona. They provide modifiers to skill rolls, but they also provide the maximum number of a corresponding trait. So competence corresponds to skills, cunning corresponds to special abilities, power corresponds to powers, prowess determines the prowess pool, which is the total number of dice that you have to distribute to your skills at the outset. Knowledge is associated with talents, and stature determines your vitality. So every character has a vitality and shock levels. So your vitality is equal to your stature plus one, which means that if you had a 0 stature, you would have 1 vitality no matter what. Special abilities and powers would inform that. So you might have a special ability that says you're extra hardy, so you start out with stature plus 2 for vitality instead of just stature plus 1, for example. So that's the first thing that we would need to decide: how many creation points we're going to start with. The attributes, you distribute them to your attributes. Before we distribute them to our attributes, though, we need to think about every character has to prioritize their attributes. So it means that you basically can't say, "Oh, I have 20 points. I'm going to have a 20 in power, and I'm going to have a 0 in everything else." That is I don't want to say unrealistic, because this is definitely not reality, but it's not what we're aiming for. So the idea is that depending on your character concept, so you want to think about what kind of character you want to play from the start, and then say, well, if I'm playing a big beefy guy, well, then clearly my stature is going to be of a higher priority. Than I'm going to focus on stature things more than I am, say, on knowledge things. So everybody gets to determine 2 first priority attributes, 2 second priority, 1 third priority, and 1 hindrance. The only thing about hindrance is it's the lowest, and there are no special things that go along with it being the hindrance attribute, but other than it's the lowest, and it won't ever get higher than the third. So the order is that second priority attributes can't be higher than first, third can't be higher than second, the hindrance can't be higher than third.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I have a question here. What would be like the average stat in general? Because I want to kind of have an idea to check how much creation point we start with.
So if we started with 20, then you would have an average of what's that? 3, 6, 9, 3, 4, 8. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 3s and 4s basically would be your average. You have
As a benchmark, what would be like an average statured human?
That's a good question, and that would be something that would be determined by the group. It would be determined by the group, by the fiction, by the setting. So there's no absolute, this is what an average human looks like.
Okay.
Okay. So, okay. How many? I'm sorry. I know it's 1 hindrance.
Yes. 2 first, 2 second, 1 third, 1 hindrance.
Okay. I had it all backwards.
So it might be a good time, and it might be better for, rather than to talk stats at this point, to say, well, okay, so what's the vibe? The vibe of the game is it's the West, but make it weird. Mm-hmm. So we talked about that first. We also talked about all of our characters being in some way anthropomorphic animals. So keep that in mind as well. The way that we'll get to race/species down the road. That will come when it comes to special abilities and powers. Will make more sense with that further down the road. But right now, I think it's probably a good idea to talk about character concept. So, given the vibe of the game, what kind of character would you be looking to play?
Well, if I'm allowed to take the lead, I already had a
You are
concept
allowed
in
to
mind.
take the lead.
Well, I had a concept in mind because as soon as you talked about Western/anthropomorphic, I came up with like a cartoon I was listening to when I was a kid, and probably that you will relate to it. It's Brave Star.
Yeah, I remember.
And Brave Star is totally Western, totally gonzo. And my character concept would probably be something along the lines of 3030, which is the anthropomorphic horse in the series. So that's my concept.
All right, so anthropomorphic horse is your concept as far as but what I would think about what they do as well as what they are. So is your character a lawman? Is he a mercenary? Is he like that sort of thing too is also what you want to keep in mind.
Well, I was going along the line of a mercenary because I already prioritize my stats, and he's all physical. Not he doesn't really have any like big powers or anything, but I see him as a very strong character, like a workhorse, and that's the idea behind it. It's pretty. I wanted. I would like him to be pretty competent with firearms, and like yeah, a mercenary would be along the lines of
Yeah.
character concept.
Sounds good. Mercenary works. That's kind of that distills that goes right to the heart of it. So, um, Franz, you have any ideas?
Yeah, sure. I was thinking about an hawk type of guy,
Okay.
which is inspired by the stranger from Oddworld. So kind of shady, but cunning, with a lot of knowledge, not very good in power and stature.
Oh
Then
no, I
Vince.
might need to deviate.
You want me to go? You want to go last?
Oh no, it's just that when he said that, I went, oh no. Sounds like we've went in a similar route. I was like, knowledge and cunning, stature at the bottom.
Here's the thing: is that numerically characters might look similar, and if you look at my sci-fi pregens, basically my sci-fi pregens were inspired by the Bad Batch from Star Wars, because I actually, for a group of friends, I did a one shot where I built all of the Bad Batch in using Fate, and then said, well, I need generic sci-fi characters for Persona, so I adapted that whole cadre, that whole squad into Persona characters. And you have two individuals in Bad Batch, Tech and Echo, who are both very similar. They both very similar concepts in terms of mechanic versus computer hacker and so on. So I had to figure out how I was going to make these two individuals unique. From an RPG perspective, these two, you get two people, and then one person wants to play Tech and one person wants to play Echo. That's all well and good, but how do you make both of them shine? So it's all well and good to have similar. So two characters can have similar stats and have different concepts. I can also see two characters with similar concepts having different stats, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I guess the concept that I was thinking of was if you have the sort of like sleepy, very much Western style town and all that, my character thought was to be not an outsider in order to be like, oh, I'm the special one, but like to be an outsider in a new situation. So his competence and stature was quite low, kind of relying on people to sort of fight for him, but knowledgeable and cunning and more into power sort of thing, a discovery and stranger to this sort of ideal, being a bit eccentric and out, like needing to rely on people and being a catfish.
Okay.
Not in beauty, anthropomorphic catfish. I just realised that and saying it.
As long as you can survive for long periods of time not being in the water, then we're good. There is a river, and the river does provide, but you.
We'll have Pat's character go like dunk him in the river every once in a while.
Forcibly.
Forcibly,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah. Patrick just needs to yeet him down the river, and you're good.
I was more thinking about the fact that catfish is good, but okay.
Catfish.
I don't know about desert fish though. That's different.
We don't eat people.
Waterboarding is now an attack roll. So I actually didn't. I usually build fighters. Fighters are my main. I usually build these like tank heavy hitters. I didn't want to this time. Um, she can
Southern
take
Belle.
a hit. She's just not very powerful. And she can take a hit because she's clumsy. So I was thinking, the low in power, but definitely high in knowledge and like the big picture stuff. So the big and the competent stuff. She is very charismatic. She's exciting all the time. She's very just woohoo.
So
And one of the things.
your charisma type things are going to fall under competence, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things I really liked when I read about the what you told us in Shadowlight, what this was similar to, was the fact that they like, the stars and stuff. So I took that and ran with it.
Okay. Yeah. I like it.
So she likes to teach people, especially the stars and just all this stuff.
Okay. Cool. And we're still going with the gecko, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna lick my own eyeball.
How can we forget?
All right. So if we all have a good idea of what kind of concept we are interested in, then I would say go ahead and so as far as, I mean, like I said, if you had 5 4 3 2 1 0, or sorry, 5 4 3 2 0, that would add up to 20 creation points, which would mean a potential of 4. So it's fine by me. It doesn't make a difference for me. It just means the higher the potential, the more things that you will have available to you. The pool of resources will be higher. If you want to start out as more like neophytes and people that are just kind of stepping out into the wider world, and then it would mean less creation points and less potential. If so, it's up to everybody.
I'm good.
Lower
with a
level,
5,
higher
4.
level.
I'm good with a 5 4 3 2 1 0.
5 4 3 2. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, 20 points sounds lovely. Yeah,
Right.
sounds cool.
So then go ahead and figure out your priorities. And then once you figure out your priorities, you're going to assign your creation points to your attributes. And then that will be step 1 done. Also, too, you can have 2 that are equal to each other. It's just that based on the priority, it just determines what can't be higher. That's all.
So just to make sure I have everything right, so the priority that we set are that the higher not the higher the priority, but it's like if I have something I put on priority 2, it cannot have stats higher than those that I have put on priority 1.
Correct.
Okay.
And we have 20 total as a group or 20 total as an individual?
As an individual.
Okay.
So like you said, it's like something along the lines of 5 4 3 2 1 0.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, because I almost legit just put 5 4 3 2 1 0.
I mean, you can if you want. It's entirely up to you. You can also make it a little. You can manipulate point by point. If it's up to you.
I'm not a point buyer.
I'm happy with the concept of either point buy or standard array, but I want point buy to be 1-for-1. I've always wanted. I never liked that idea from D&D where it's like, well, here's the formula, and you can buy 1-for-1 up to this score, and then after that it's 1-for-2, and then 1 for. I'm like, no, everything should be 1-for-1. Just
It's a lot of math.
Okay, I'm set.
Same. I'm all good.
Good. You'll also want to think about names too. That would be helpful.
I've done that already.
Yes.
Okay. Fantastic.
You can imagine that from what I've described, my character is has knowledge of 5. No.
It's
Cool.
old man knowledge.
Old man
Well,
knowledge. Yes.
Don't start with that. Oh, he's all about stature and prowess. Stature? Stature? Stature.
Stature.
Yeah.
Well, my character is high in competence and cunning, and pretty low on power and stature.
So should I go to the next slide to continue on to talk about skills next?
Sure.
All right.
Please do.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, okay, I'm sorry, I take that back. Vitality, which I already kind of covered. For the most part, vitality will come into play when it comes to violent encounters. So, kind of a basic idea of escalation in a scene. So, a scene might start out with no clear picture of just stuff happening, no clear indication of where things are heading in terms of where the dice and the mechanics come into play. When that starts to happen, when it looks like challenges are getting thrown around, things would start to escalate from just your average scene to a non-violent encounter. They may escalate to a violent encounter almost as quickly, literally escalating quickly. It's a possibility. It's possible to have both scenarios: go from nothing to non-violent to violent, or go from nothing to violent almost instantly. I went over vitality real quick. It's 1 plus stature. You sustain a number of hits equal to your vitality. Once you hit that number, then you literally go into shock. So every hit beyond that is shock 1, 2, 3. When you hit shock 3, you are rendered inoperative, i.e., you fall unconscious. The nomenclature and the terminology around vitality and shock is intentionally non-specific to people and non-specific to living things. So I transitioned it from talking about health and things like that because there is a way to play in such a way that anything can be a character, anything can be an identity. So a locked door could have a vitality and shock track potentially. It's just everything depends on the fiction. So I did kind of go over vitality real quick, and the math there is pretty easy. So you should know what your vitality is as soon as you know what your stature is. And so now we can get on to skills. So skills are where the dice rolling comes into play. So the default die for any Persona game is the D10. You're always rolling D10s. You're always rolling X number of D10s. Depending on the skill that you're using, when you issue a challenge. So when you want to accomplish something, you issue a challenge. I want to shoot the bandit. Okay, I draw my gun, I shoot the bandit. Okay, you're issuing a challenge to the bandit. You're issuing an attack challenge. You are rolling X number of dice. And then comparison comes into play. So you roll your dice, the bandit rolls their dice, and you compare the top dice in both cases. If your top die result plus a relevant attribute is higher than who's answering the challenge, then you succeed the challenge and something happens. And that's all done through skills. So everybody has 3 default skills that are available to them immediately without having to name them, which is block, dodge, and resist. So if you're ever in a situation where you can't get out of the way of something, you're gonna and you want to defend yourself, it would be block. If you can actively avoid, it would be dodge. And resist is kind of a catch-all. It is to avoid harmful effects that may not necessarily involve physical attacks. It could be the effects of weather. It could be poison. It could be disease. It could be, if the game involves an explicit supernatural element, it could be resisting the effects of a magic spell or a psychic power or something along those lines. So those are automatically unlocked for everybody. And then after that, your competence is going to determine the maximum number of skills that you can begin play with. So if you have a competence of 3, you can begin play with up to three unlocked skills. And there is no explicit skill list, so you can define your skills however you choose to. It could be as granular as pistols, if we're talking about gun and firearms. It could be as granular as pistols, carbines, Gatling gun, etc. It could be just firearms, and then you can get more specific with special abilities and powers. It could be melee. It could be brawling. It could be burglary. It could be lockpicking. It could be gymnastics, athletics, acrobatics. Basically, you want it to be specific, and you want it to be active, and you want it to make sense within the fiction, and you want it to make sense for your character.
Okay.
I have a question. Could it be something such as like feat of strength?
So can you? Yeah, it can. I mean, so basically, like you're talking about, like I lift things real well, or I,
For example, let's say we're in prison. I would be the kind to try to bend the bars.
So, if you wanted to call it strength, you could. I mean, and you would roll strength to bend the bars. Yes. So you're welcome to call it that. You're welcome to also call it athletics, call it physique, call it brawn. Break out your thesaurus and use whatever word you want to describe that, basically.
As long as I can justify its use in a given challenge.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
A question. You
Did
mentioned
anybody have any designs on? Because, like I said, it's Western, but make it weird. So, did anybody have any designs on wanting to use ritual or magic or anything along those lines? You don't have to if you don't want to, but it's certainly there as an option.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm willing to
So-
try.
So what you would want to do is you would want to, and again, it could be the skill could simply be called magic. The setting, the flavor of it. If we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons, it would look like along the lines of warlock versus wizard versus sorcerer versus cleric versus bard. All of them have different flavors. Druid have different flavors of how they cast their spells, what their thematic elements are. So you could call it magic, you could call it primal, you could call it divine, you could call it, it's up to you. But you could have a magic skill if you wanted.
Let's go.
Can I use this to have weird makeshift kind of ammo for my revolver, just like the stranger in Oddworld?
Makeshift armor? Is that what you said? I'm sorry?
Ammunition.
Oh, ammunition. So basically you want to be able to make your ammunition on the fly, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds to me more like it would be a special ability rather than a skill. I would say the skill would be, you're definitely going to want to have a if you're interested in firearms, or your character is proficient in firearms, then having a firearms skill would be appropriate. And
Okay.
you may also want to have you could conceivably have a crafting skill.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So once you decide on the skills themselves, then the skills, every skill will have a default attribute. So it will have a default attribute that you will add whenever you are determining the result of your roll. So firearms would make sense. It could make sense that the default attribute is cunning, because cunning is not only it's agility, it's dexterity, it's all those words come to mind when talking about cunning. So for me, if I had a firearm skill, I would make the default attribute cunning personally. Patrick, your feat of strength would make sense that stature would be the default attribute.
Okay.
Magic would default to power. Would make sense for a magic skill to default to power, to be the default attribute. Crafting could be so prowess as an attribute is all about formal learning and formal training. Um, the corresponding trait is the prowess pool. So the maximum number of dice that you can increase the rating of your skills by is equal to your prowess times 3. So if your prowess is a 2, then your prowess pool is a 6. You can then use your prowess pool to increase the rating of your skills. So when a skill is unlocked, it is named and it's defined, and you can then increase the rating of it by taking points out of the prowess pool, and they become dice that then increase the rating of the skill. So by default, block, dodge, and resist, every unlocked skill starts at 2. You are always able to roll a minimum of 1 die in any situation, regardless of whether you have a skill in it or not. If you have a skill in the particular area where you're rolling, you can always roll a minimum of 2 dice. And then higher up depending on the rating of the skill. So for example, if your prowess pool is a 6 and you decided that you wanted to put 2 of those dice into block, it would go from a rating of a 2 to a rating of a 4. And then you'd have 4 dice left over in your prowess pool. And you don't have to assign every single die in your prowess pool. You can if you want to, but you're not obligated to. They can sit there until you decide some later time, oh, I think it would be a good idea to increase this skill. Or if you gain new skills along the way, you unlock a new skill. Okay, now I've got some points left in my prowess pool. I'm going to bump up the rating of that skill.
Okay. How many skills are we writing down right now?
You have a maximum equal to your competence. So if your competence is a 3, for example, then you would have a maximum number of unlocked skills equal to 3. So you don't have to write down 3 skills. You can if you want. All the maximums are there as an upper limit, but it's never a you must have 3 skills, or you must have 3 special abilities, or you must have 3 powers. It's always that's the most that you can ever have at any given time.
Okay. And the prowess pool is your prowess times 3?
Yes.
That is not that. There we go.
Yeah, the form fillable character sheet is forthcoming. I started working on it and got sidetracked.
It's okay. So you're saying all like the charisma attributes, so like persuade, I'm assuming distract, things like that would be competence.
Yes, that's correct. Now, something like distract could conceivably be cunning also,
Okay.
because it could be a question of, sleight of hand, legerdemain, something along those lines, but it's how you decide it. And it's also the default. The fictional circumstances I might say, yeah, you're rolling your skill, but you're trying to direct their attention, deflect their attention. So it really, I don't think competence makes sense for you to add. I think it makes more sense for you to add cunning.
Got it.
So the defaults are default and could change depending on the circumstances.
I didn't realize skills were going to become the hardest part of this whole thing.
That's curious. I always thought that they would be the most straightforward. Like, I swing swords, I shoot guns, I jump high, I lie to people, I try to convince people, convince diplomat, whatever you want to call it. That's just me personally, though. I always thought that the more challenging things were special abilities and powers. But
Oh, I'm sure that will be too. Of that, I have no doubt.
Well, I've written down like boomsticks. Everything like not like a handgun or a pistol, but more of a rifle or shotgun, a 30-30, stuff like that. And I have feet of strength and knuckles.
oh, okay.
I have the knuckles skill.
And Knuckles.
I'm sorry.
No, the meme and Knuckles, from
Oh,
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Okay.
he's my boy. I love Knuckles.
Same.
I admit I never really played much Sonic. I was always much more of a Nintendo person, so I'm all up on my Mario's and my Metroids and so on.
Sega.
When they were naming this game, didn't they realize that Zelda is not the main character?
An oversight.
How could they make Zelda a man? What?
Well, technically, Zelda is the one narrating the legends, so it does make sense.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
I have a question. I wanted to have a skill, an investigating one. Like, my character has a fine eye for the details and such. Should it go on knowledge or cunning?
I personally would make it cunning, but
Okay.
it could be um, if I would split it. I would say that if you have a keen eye for noticing details and things like that, that would be cunning. If it was
Okay.
you're doing your Sherlock Holmesian deductive reasoning, that would be much more of a knowledge thing
Perfect.
because you are
Okay.
utilizing your collected wealth of knowledge to draw conclusions. So maybe that would be called deduce or something like that.
Deduce. Okay. Thank you.
I was sitting here trying to figure that out too.
I like words.
You were trying to deduce it.
Considering that I see my character not as a very agile character, but a pretty strong character, I maybe for Knuckles I would use my stature, my stature, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And by knuckles, you're meaning like connecting your knuckles with someone's face.
Exactly.
Yes, I knuckle them. Yeah, definitely stature.
I cast knuckle.
I cast Knuckles.
Yes, my name is Big B, and I cast knuckles.
Oh, playing a bee, missed opportunity.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
may I borrow your attention just to run down this because I don't want to start the game and be like, I've done this all correct, and then get into the game and I've went, I've done it incorrect. So the 5 skills I've went for because my what's it? No, competence. There we go.
It's a
Is
5.
5. Yeah. So I've got arcane, history and law, survival. Just meaning like rubbing sticks together, making fire. Engineering, just knowledge of, I guess, and medicine, knowledge of medicinal, and then each because I've unlocked that skill is 2 dice, but then with my prowess times 3 gives me 6 because I have 2.
So a pool
Right.
that you can use then to, if you think of that pool as a handful of dice, and you're
Mhm.
taking one die out or more out of the pool and assigning them.
Okay.
The only other thing that I just remembered is, so there is a cap on skill rating. So
Okay.
this is where potential comes into play. So um, unlocked skills cannot have a rating higher than. Oh, it would be helpful if I could remember that. I think it is potential +2. Let me see if I can find that. Find the right document for that.
Engineering sounds complicated. Can we eat this?
That sounds more like the survival one, but I mean, either way.
Not if we're trying to eat a toaster.
Well, that's a supplement of iron, right?
If you've got an iron toaster, there's something.
I'm sorry, it was the only skill I could think of. I have the toaster skill.
Iron stomach.
Normally, I play very bright characters, but for once, I really want to play someone like not a dumb, but like limit dumb.
We switched because I usually do that.
It's fun being an idiot. I play one every day.
Wisdom is a dump stat. Look, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I want to say off the top of my head, I can't find the explicit reference to it, but off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure that it's so. If you're so everybody's potential is 4, so that means the maximum rating in a skill you could have is 6, which may or may not be possible depending on how you allocated your creation points. So, yeah.
Okay. If that's the limit, I'm definitely under that. So, okay, that's okay.
So one more time, you said so 5 of them. You said I
Yeah.
heard medicine, I heard lore,
Survival,
survival,
and
engineering,
arcane.
and arcane. Right.
I like
Okay.
magic. Yeah.
The unseen world, the weird, the strange, the.
Eldritch.
Your arcane skill would be more about doing that stuff, and your lore skill would be more about knowing that stuff. If
That's
that makes
okay. Yeah.
yeah, in my mind anyway.
Cool.
Am I good to, or are we good to move on to special abilities, or are we still working on skills?
Oh, there's one thing I would like to clarify. I missed the entire point about the prowess pool. If I'm not mistaken, it's your prowess multiplied by 2, which is your prowess pool.
3.
3. Okay.
Yes.
So
if your prowess is a 2, then your prowess pool would be a 6.
okay,
So
and by default, the block, dodge, and resist, we have to put
they
points in there.
They start at 2.
Okay.
They start at 2 dice, and then you can take dice out of your prowess pool and put them into any of those as you wish.
And this is at creation only, or it can be done later on?
There is a whole advancement development, character development piece. It works a little bit differently than creation. During creation, there's a parity, P-A-R-I-T-Y, parity between attributes and traits. After gameplay starts and you're doing advancement, you're doing character development, it's one or the other. So you can increase an attribute or pick up a new trait. In character creation, they happen at the same time.
Also, I hope I'm not being a dum-dum. The 2 columns rating and modifier.
Yes.
How
So
does
the rating is the number of dice,
Uh-huh.
and the modifier is the stat, is the attribute. So if
Okay.
you're, for your arcane, it would be rating would be the number of dice that you have in the skill, and the modifier would be your power, or would make sense that it was your power.
And the number of that skill goes
Yes.
attribute goes now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I'm ready to move on if you're waiting
Okay.
for me.
All right. On to the next. So special abilities are a wide kind of catch-all. They're D&D's feats. They're the things that make your character better in certain circumstances at what they do. So, for example, if you had a skill called firearms, you could have a special ability that says, "I'm really good with pistols." This is why, and this is how that translates. Now, I do have a list. Let me see if I can. I'm going to switch how I'm screen sharing so I can share this. Okay, can you give me that again, Switzy?
Yep. You've been on it the whole time, so if you need to switch things out, no worries.
All right. So, for example, a special ability can add a number to the result of a skill roll. It could add one or more dice to the skill roll. It could allow you to re-roll. It could force an opponent to re-roll. It can increase the number of hits that you sustain, that you inflict with a hit. It could tack on some sort of benefit that can't be described, like from the above examples, to one of your skills. It can provide an additional or alternate benefit to one of your powers. We'll get into criticals a little bit later, but you can use criticals. You can have a special ability specifically say, when I spend a critical, it does this. This is not an exhaustive list. So it might behoove you to stick to this list right now, for the sake of not having to spend too many spoons or spell slots trying to think about special abilities, but yeah.
Okay.
For example, Patrick, to go back to your boomstick example, by default, an attack challenge is one attack or one target. Your scattergun might say, hey, when I'm using the scattergun, I can target 2 opponents instead of just 1. Because I'm opening the choke on the scattergun. Like
Oh,
that's
I
right.
love that. Okay. How would you write that down? Scatter shots?
Scatter shot, sure. Yep. So by default, special abilities, only one special ability can be used at a time in the midst of an encounter, regardless of whether the encounter is violent or non-violent. If you upgrade, if you upgrade, you can choose to make it always in effect, pardon me, by making it a special quality rather than just a special ability. So the number of special abilities that you have is equal to your cunning, that's what you start play with. So if your cunning is a 5, you would start play with 5 special abilities. You can think about that as points, and you can combine them to make special abilities better, to make a special ability a special quality, meaning that it's always in effect. There's nuance there.
Well, for example, I think that I would really like to make the scattershot thing a quality.
Okay. Then so for example, all right. So what is your character's cunning, Patrick?
It's 4.
Okay. So then, if you wanted to make, so you would have your scatter shot would be the special ability. If you made it a special quality, that would be 1 extra. So that would leave you with that would count as 2.
Okay.
So that would leave you with 2 more.
So I have to circle the Q at the end of the line, right?
That you don't have to, but that's what it's there for. It's there to help you.
Okay.
It's there to help you to remember that it's a special quality. Now, there are 4 default types of special abilities: background, conditional, exceptional gear, and quality. So exceptional gear works similarly to a quality. If you have, let's say that you have a pistol that shoots an arc of electricity instead of bullets, that would be considered exceptional gear. You would treat that special ability as 2 instead of 1, just like a special quality. That's an example of exceptional gear. A conditional special ability would be explicitly hamstringing a special ability. That would basically allow you to make it more interesting, make it more capable. So if you said this special ability is only usable once per day, or I can only use it under the light of the full moon, because you could have in fiction conditions, you can have out of character conditions. In either case, regardless, any condition that you impose on the special ability lets you bump it up by 1. And then background constitutes culture, species, all of those. It's a catch-all category, and everybody gets that for free. Everybody gets 1 background special ability for free.
Oh, so I was thinking about doing like a workhorse special ability.
Okay.
That would allow Flint, my character, to overwork itself over a very long period of time. So that would be like a background special ability.
Yeah, because it would be related to you being a horse person.
Okay.
So horsemen are literal workhorses. They can what's the word? They can extend themselves over longer periods of time than most. They have a higher endurance. So maybe you could. I mean, there's a variety of different ways that you could express that mechanically, and you don't even have to express it mechanically right now. You can just write it down. Hey, you know what? I have horsemen. I have extraordinary endurance, and then figure out the mechanical details later. So,
okay.
So yeah, so it's the 4 different types of special abilities. Maybe the gecko could shoot its tongue out and have a prehensile tongue or something. I don't know.
Can I have the insanely useless ability of water breathing in the desert?
That is entirely up to you.
I'm a fish. I've made this grave for myself.
You are adaptable. You can breathe air or water.
I'm technically an amphibian. I'm a traitor, right?
What is it, Squid?
I'm just dying laughing at the picture in my head of a prehensile tongue.
Well, I have a request regarding that. If you could like maybe one time in the game, like snatch the gun off the hand of someone with that tongue, that would be great.
Oh my gosh. That's how she sleeps at night. She wraps her tongue around a tree branch and just hangs there.
Oh. Question. Can I get, since I'm a hawk person, a soar ability to lift myself to medium height to observe from above as a
Sounds good.
background ability?
Sounds good to me. We'll get into actions and movement and stuff like that down the road.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, you basically your bone structure is sufficient to allow you to lift yourself into the air with your wings, and yeah.
I also wanted to have perhaps conditional ability,
Okay.
which is quick draw. Like kind of, I'm kind of picturing myself as a duelist.
Okay, I like it. So it doesn't have to be conditional. All conditional means is that you're imposing limitations on it in order to get a greater benefit, but it doesn't have to be conditional if you don't want it to be.
Okay, could I sign this as an exceptional gear or a quality then?
Exceptional gear would be a bit like, do you have something like, for example, do you have a quick draw holster? Like exceptional gear is
Yeah.
equipment. It's a specific. It's
Yeah,
a
I was.
Okay. So
Sure, I was. Sorry, go on.
no, I'm just trying to help you understand. So
Okay. So I was thinking about, as you said, Western, but make it weird. So I'm thinking about a weird sort of pistol who shoots weird ammos, makeshift ammos, and it's modified to be as lightweight as possible, and
Okay.
it's hanging low on my leg,
Yep.
so I can actually be the most efficient and at quick drawing and shooting without actually wasting time taking aiming at my target, but more like a
Here's what I'm
impulsive
thinking.
shot, something like this.
So, yeah, I like all of it. I'm totally down. What I'm thinking is that you have the ability when it comes time when you want to escalate things to a violent encounter, meaning that you want to shoot somebody.
Mhm.
You can basically declare, and as soon as you declare, your turn happens first.
Okay.
Because there is no explicit initiative system. Basically, it is sort of what might be called popcorn initiative, or everybody gets a turn, or whatever you want to call it. But there is no we don't roll for initiative. We don't use anything specific to determine action order. So usually it's dependent on, okay, if somebody's, somebody looks at Squidsy's gecko and says, "You're yellow," and
Yes,
is looking to demoralize them by insulting them. That would definitely be issuing a challenge to Squidsy's character.
Mm-hmm.
That would kick off an encounter. Now, if you happen to catch out of the corner of your eye, for example, that it looks like someone's getting ready to insult Squidsy's character, you might just say, "Bang," and you would be able to go before they even have a chance to spit out the insult.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
it's
Like,
fine.
Can I ask another question?
She'd point to her yellow skin and go, "Yes, I am. Thank you." It's a very nice yellow.
It's a saffron, if you will.
Yeah.
Special abilities and powers, when it comes to special abilities and powers, it's the most fun that I have when making characters, because it's challenging, and yes, it's incredibly open-ended, but it's really where I think you get the opportunity to give your character the most flavor.
And how many do we get one more time before I just fill out all of these?
You get a maximum number equal to your cunning.
Perfect. I have the correct amount.
So, let's say I would like to have like a bucking attack. My my feet slash hooves, obviously.
Yes.
Would that be like a power or a special ability?
I'll get to powers in a second, but what would you want the kicking attack to do? What would you want it to accomplish? Anything special, or you just want to hurt somebody with it?
Well, I figure that a bucking horse is pretty powerful, so basically it could be used uh, for maybe some specific type of feat of strength, but as well as to attack.
Okay, so you could conceivably say that your bucking attack is more lethal than your knuckles. So your kicking attack might actually inflict an additional hit when you succeed an attack challenge. That would be a special ability. So if you wrote it that way, as in when you succeed an attack challenge by bucking, inflict an extra hit.
Okay.
So you turn around, you turn your hindquarters towards that bandit, and you haul off and buck and kick. If you connect, you inflict an extra hit.
Well, on the downside, I'm making myself vulnerable, but I'm sure that the attack is the attack is more powerful.
Now, if you want, you can certainly say that you can explicitly say that maneuver makes you more vulnerable in some way. You don't have to, but it makes sense in the fiction if you wanted to add that condition to it. That's something that you may want to think about. Because you could add that condition to it and say that that's always in effect. I mean, again, don't forget that by default, a special ability, only one can be used per action in the middle of an encounter. So if you wanted to always be like you are just so aware of your surroundings, and you can turn yourself towards any opponent, you can always take advantage of that. You could do it that way. I'm not saying that you have to. I'm just saying that's a possibility.
Okay. So I call that
forward to
buckaroo.
I'm sorry.
I call that bucking buckaroo.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
We're good to move on to powers?
Sure. But well, for me at least.
I will say, as somebody who lives in Texas, I am digging the just stereotypical bucking buckaroo and all that. I am adoring it.
I'm glad. Okay, I guess I go to. I guess I go to talents because it's next. It's the next attribute. So, talents are correlated to knowledge. So, there are 4 different types of talents. Everybody will get a background one for free, and that it could be so the identifiers, you can have more than one identifier. So, for example, let's say that the people of this village have their own language, and it might be different than the trade tongue that everybody uses to do business from north to south to east to west. So if you're a native of, like, if you grew up in this village, you spent your entire life in this village, then you might have this village's language as a background as you get it for free. So once again, everybody would get a background talent for free related to their background. You get a number of talents equal to your knowledge. So if you have a 5 in knowledge, you start play with 5 talents. A talent can either be an expertise, it can be a language, or it could be a resource. In the case of an expertise, it could be, for example, Ellis, have you come up with a name for your character yet?
I have. Ahab.
Ahab?
Mm-hmm.
Ahab, the catfish man.
Ahab Sandbar.
I love it.
Ahab.
So Ahab could be really good at bone setting.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could say that Ahab has an expertise in bone setting, and once per once per session, once per session, you can call on that talent to get an additional die when you issue or answer a challenge. So if you had somebody who had a compound fracture and you wanted to try and fix it, well, you're really good at bone setting, so you could call on that talent, call on that expertise, and grab an additional die to roll.
I see.
Ahab could also have a talent, an expertise talent related to when I'm performing rituals to try and gather. I'm doing a ritual to try and make it rain. So weather wise might be a talent. So that's another example of an expertise talent. It probably won't. The resource talents won't come into play in a one shot, but resource talents are currency for all intents and purposes. They're money. They're how wealthy you are. So you can take resource talents to recognize, to acknowledge that your character has material wealth.
I see.
And that could come into play. It may not in this one shot, but it definitely would potentially in a longer term campaign. And then language is pretty self-explanatory. So it's speak, read, and write a particular language. So each of your, each of your species, depending on the setting, might have a language. Secret organizations might have a language. Religious orders might have a language. It's pretty open-ended there. But the primary benefits of are really fall under expertise and resources as far as talents go. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I had a question regarding talents because where you said that we have a background talent for free.
Yes. So you could say, so your character could be like, um, maybe you before you became a mercenary, you were a strong man in a carnival. So when you lift things over your head, that's an expertise.
Okay.
And that could be really maybe horsemen have that could be your endurance. That you could certainly formulate it in such a way to say that your endurance is a talent rather than a special ability. So you'd be able to call on that extra die. Um, Again, it's up to you, but that's certainly a possibility.
Well, the idea I had would maybe go a little bit away from the concept, but at the same time, it could be related. My idea was that Flint was born and raised in a local tribe, and therefore he has quite a good relation with the local tribes.
So there were some indigenous folk in the area that where you were raised.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
And so what would that translate into?
well, I'm thinking that maybe indigenous people are wary of the civilized areas, and Flint would kind of be the bridge between the two of them because he's both a native and he's living within the civilization. So it could be comfortable regarding relations with both uh, both worlds.
And I like it a lot. Now, I had an idea as soon as you shared in the group chat prior to today that you wanted to play a character like the character from Brave Star. That immediately made me think, well, how does he feel about people using common horses as transportation? Because these
Probably
are
that I
not,
would react very badly, but anyway.
that's one thing about each of your characters is that there are common catfish and there are common geckos and there are common horses and there are common hawks. Somewhere along the way in your character's development, you woke up and you realized that you achieved self-awareness. You recognized that you were in some way different. You so that's what made me. I was like, oh, if you're gonna play an anthro horse, like how does this person feel about? How does this guy feel about people using like riding horses as transportation? Like, I mean, it would be a pretty standard practice. So, um, yeah, it's just something that occurred to me. But I totally like the idea of you acting as a bridge in terms of culture between indigenous people and a quote unquote civilized town. Especially because, well, if a bunch of outsiders showed up and said, "Well, we're going to build a town here because there's so many trees around, we can harvest them as lumber, and we can send the lumber on riverboats downriver to one of the bigger cities, and this is pretty much going to define our entire identity as a town because this is going to be our primary source of income." So, of course, what builds up in this town, people need tools, people need food, people need entertainment, people need comfort, and so on and so forth, as this was wont to happen in the 19th century, basically. So, acting as a bridge between indigenous people who are starting to feel themselves pushed against by civilization, and you acting as a bridge between civilization and the indigenous people definitely works for me.
Okay. So how would you um, translate that whole ability into like a word or a short sentence for putting it into a talent?
It sounds to me like it's related to diplomacy and to negotiation and trying to hammer out agreements. So um, maybe it's like indigenous familiarity.
Good.
So anytime that you deal with the indigenous peoples that are surrounding uh, this town, you can call upon your indigenous familiarity for an extra die when it comes to a challenge.
And to answer your question, I would probably be pissed off by the fact that people abuse um, horses. But if there's like a respectful relation between the horses and the humans, maybe I would probably be cool with that. But in any case of abuse, I would probably snap.
Like it. All right, how are we feeling about talents? Are we good? Can we keep move on or questions?
I have a question. Since my background is uh, one of a trapper, someone who travels from coast to coast to exchange furs and stuff like this, since I'm kind of a hunter guy,
Okay.
surviving the woods and traveling through the desert,
Okay.
uh, I'm not sure which talent should I choose. Should I add to my pool something?
I mean, that could be where the resource comes in. Maybe because of how well you're traveled, uh, you have on hand just a wide variety of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you could literally call it a wide variety of stuff and call it a resource.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Thanks.
Just wide variety.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to come up with just one more.
And don't forget, you don't have to. It's always you know, the max is equal to the attribute. You don't ever, shouldn't ever feel like you're obligated. So if you want to leave that space open, you're welcome to do that.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm ready to move.
All right, let's go. So powers. Powers are intended to represent the direct manifestation of the supernatural. So fireball, magic missile, bolt of lightning, hypnosis, mind control, seeing invisible things, anything that falls under the realm of. I like to draw the line when it comes to supernatural versus natural, as in the rules are the natural and breaking the rules are the supernatural. So if it can go against physics or the natural order of things, turn lead into gold, alter chemical structure, stuff like that, that's the supernatural. Your character doesn't have to have powers. If you decide that your character is not supernaturally inclined, that's all good. What you can instead do is you can take the points that you would get for powers and use them to upgrade special abilities. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
people who does magic is scary anyway.
Oh, a magic could be very scary depending on how common it is. For somebody who walks into town and they're blind, but they can see that they can make their way around and they don't use a stick or whatever, and they just uh, you know they're blind but they can see, or they can tell the future or things like that. I mean, that stuff, for if magic is not common, it's definitely going to be scary. It's scary, but at the same time, everybody knows that it's real. Like there's generally no, like, does magic exist in this setting of this one shot? Yes, it definitely does. Is it scary because of how potentially reality bending it is? Definitely.
Well, Flint is not comfortable around people who forces natures into submitting to do something that is not intended to be natural. That's his point of view. He knows that it exists, but he's not comfortable with it. The only kind of magic that he's comfortable with is the one that the shaman was doing back in his tribe.
Yeah, same for Kester.
There are wise people. There are wise people amongst the indigenous that that speak with nature, speak with animals. You might call them druids. You might call them shamans, depending on what your point of view is. But there are.
Because for Flint, it's not magic. It's more of a communion with nature for him. That's why he's more comfortable with the magic that the indigenous people does.
I sincerely hope that we're being respectful while we talk about this. I'm trying to use very generic terminology.
Yeah.
So, whereas what Ahab does with Arcane is much more obvious and yeah. So Ahab would more than likely have explicit powers. So, but you don't have to. I'm just saying it would make sense.
I'll put the likes of disguise down, just because you mentioned about Shirul being a bit, wanting to make sure that they're a bit concealed.
So you want to have a power that you use to disguise yourself.
Essentially, just so I don't. Just when I read the text of
You don't
Shiryu
want to
and
stick
then
out as
the
a catfish
disguise.
person.
Yeah, basically, yes.
So just real quick to go over the maximum number of powers that you can have when play begins is equal to your power. Powers have a duration identifier, so they are either instant, meaning it's one and done. I cast Magic Missile. Magic Missile does its thing. It hurts somebody. It's over. A maintain power means that you must, in the middle of an encounter, you must say with every action when it's your turn, I'm maintaining this power. I'm holding a charm on someone and their attention is focused on me. I have to maintain concentration on it. I can do nothing else except maintain concentration on that. An independent power is I cast it, it's ongoing. It's ongoing as long as I want it to, but I don't have to pay attention to it. I can do other things. And a special duration is it might last a day. It might last until the spring. It's going to be dependent on the fiction, and it's going to be described within the description of the power. That's how power duration works. So, for example, if you had a power of 3, the maximum number of powers you could have would be 3 when play begins. If it doesn't make sense for your character to have quote-unquote magic powers, you can instead use those 3 to upgrade special abilities. That's the more subtle, less explicit use of power and powers.
Trying to figure out how to put it into words.
Okay.
Because her background is a teacher.
Okay.
And something I was thinking of for powers was to be able to almost paint in the air to, shift stories and teach lessons.
Okay.
I only get one, so that's what I thought of. And so I was trying to figure out how to put that into words.
So you create and as you talk and as you gesture, you create visual elements. You bring them to life through the use of words and through the use of gestures. You bring visual elements into being.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure. Well, Ahem, not Ahab. I'm sorry.
That was no. It is Ahab. That was my spelling mistake.
Oh,
And I was like, oh well, I guess I'm a pig.
I like it. So tell me about Pyrosphere and tell me about Enhanced Weapon.
The hope was that I'm absolutely fine with enhanced weapon just being something that if a issue arises, for example, if Flint starts to fight or clobber in any way, I would assume that with his boomsticks sort of thing, I would want to make the hit on that weapon better in some way, increase the hit that it does, perhaps.
You can do that. You can either make the hit be more lethal.
Mm-hmm.
You could enhance its ability so you could give him an extra die on the roll. You could give him bonus to the roll. The way that I like to envision kind of and come up with a framework for advancement, so that way you're not just like for example, let's say that I decide to I have a special ability where one of my skills gets a reroll of a die. I would start out with gets a reroll of a die but takes the second result, gets a reroll of a die but takes the better result, and then a +1 to the roll. Because the +1 to the roll, somewhere along the way, as we were working on this, somebody told me that the +1 is always going to be better potentially than the reroll, but I don't know. It's been a long time. But at the same time, by coming up with a framework for advancement for your skills, your special abilities, and so on for long-term play, it would give you the opportunity to give you a clear picture as to how you're going to spend your development points when it comes time to advance your characters. I like that. So you would decide, do you want to make him more accurate? Do you want to make him more lethal? You would decide when you say that you're casting the spell. So when the disguise, you would establish the disguise, but people that see you, if they pay close enough attention, they may have the opportunity to be able to see through it. So there might be a roll-off challenge, in which case you would roll your arcane in order to test the integrity of the disguise. You're basically you're surrounding yourself kind of in an illusion. That's the way that I see it.
Yep, that makes sense.
And then so Pyrosphere, we're talking fireball.
Yeah.
So basically, that's a very basic one target opponent inflicts one hit, and that's how it starts. And then as you can choose to improve it, and you can say that it could potentially hit more people, it could do more, inflict more harm, and so on as you improved it.
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
So I'm gonna switch over to a blank screen so I can also send you mine.
Okay. Also, I was thinking that it might be a good time here to have a bio break. I don't know. I know you said that when we turn our cameras off that it makes the screen layout a little weird, but
it's okay. It's on a black screen right now. Nobody can see anything. Okay, I didn't fill out the little like side things, but it's all hopefully there and right, maybe. Also, yeah, it's okay because right now we're not on anything. We're not on anything special. So if y'all want to turn y'all's cameras off to go get water or whatever, it's not gonna mess anything up.
That's my girl.
Yeah.
it looks good. On a scan, the only thing that I would say is for your skills, you may just want to you want to make sure that you do your assign dice to them. So they all start out at a minimum of 2, and your prowess pool is 9 dice. So you're going to take dice out of the prowess pool and assign them to skills to make your skills higher, to give them a higher rating.
So that would be put in the modifier.
No, that would be put in the rating. The modifier is the attribute that's associated. So, for example, your persuade, you said that your default attribute was competence. So the modifier would be 5 because your competence is a 5. But the rating would be 2 plus however many dice you assign to it from your prowess pool.
Got it. Thank you.
So I'm going to
yeah.
use facilities. I'll be back in a minute. It's
so quiet.
I can't chat and talk at the same time.
It is too quite, Splendid Ranger. It's too quite.
I hate it when it's quite.
Wait, is that Fluffy? I know that crab anywhere. I'm so excited for that game.
So do I. Should be around something around 30, maybe 40 pages in a zine format.
I'm really excited.
And Lester Burton, the owner of Grok, is very very helpful. I chat with him a lot, and he kind of gave me really good insight about how to use the different game mechanics.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a fun game. Like I said, the idea of a group playing just is killing me.
Yeah, there's the whole rebellious vibe behind rock music, and at the same time, the characters gets to be like unlikely heroes. No, I guess it's going to be pretty fun, but maybe like a nightmare for the tour managers.
Oh, 100%. 1000%.
Trying to manage a bunch of spoilish stars, that's gonna be really hard for the tour managers.
So are we all back?
I think so.
Okay. So Patrick, you have to leave at 1, so that's another 10 minutes or so.
Okay, hang on. 1 EST or CST?
EST.
EST.
So basically 10 more minutes.
Yeah.
So what is everybody's feeling? Would we like to devote the entirety of session 2 to the one shot? Do we want to continue and start play here, even though Patrick won't be here? What are our thoughts?
It's entirely up to y'all. I mean, I'm down for either one.
Same, I'm down for either one.
Because I can be here for another hour.
Friends?
Yeah, me too. I've got an hour, 1.5
Right.
hours.
So what I was thinking is so that Patrick doesn't miss out on too much. What I might do is just sort of set the scene, so to speak. If over the next maybe 30 minutes or so, throw out some big plot elements and throw out some big potential mysteries that are things that you could explore, and then I can catch Patrick up on that, and that way when we convene for the next session, the next session would be the lion's share of the experience.
That sounds perfect.
That's cool for me.
Okay.
So, as we said already, the theme, the premise of this game is the West, but make it weird. It's not going to be a perfect historical analog, so it's not like it's taking place in the United States in 1873 or something like that. Like it's we are in a sleepy logging valley town, which I have a name for it. My spreadsheet. Oh yeah, called Eatswoad. So it's set in a valley. along the estuary of a larger river called the Muscovern River. And the Muscovern River flows south to a much larger town bordering on city called Greymar. Greymar. It is probably in this region the height of civilization. It has a number of railroad lines feeding into it. The larger Muscovern River runs through it. It is actually, Greymar is a number of smaller towns that all sit on islands in a stream, basically. So they are land masses inside or within the boundaries of the river that have all been banded together through the use of bridges and such. No tunnels, just all bridges. But Eatswoad is the town where you guys will start. Logging town, estuary, river valley, plenty of trees just overflowing with all the timber than one could possibly want. It's just a question of time, the time that it takes to cut it down, and the people that are ambitious that live in the town are not really concerned about how long it takes for those trees to regrow. They're more concerned about what could be used to be made with the timber, with the lumber that comes from those trees. So the weird things in the area where you guys have heard stories, rumors, points of interest, and also too, I would imagine that y'all know each other. We can talk about backstory as far as how you all became friends, but maybe each of you has your own individual adventures, and maybe Eatswoad is where you come to hang your hat and to take a load off and so on. You all know each other. Maybe you're friendly with each other, maybe you're not, but at the very least, you know each other. Greymar is, like I said, it's kind of as far as a city is concerned, it's like the height of civilization in this region. And that's something that the indigenous people are very wary of. They're the height of technology in terms of steam, in terms of coal, logistics, moving around lumber, telegraph poles going up. I mean, so many changes happening in one place in a very short period of time. I will put together a Google Doc for everybody's benefit, just with names and just things to help keep everybody on track. But there are 3 points of talk and rumor that stand out amongst all the rest. Out in the middle of the wilderness, there is what some people describe as a decrepit, dilapidated, ironclad. Why it's in the middle of the wilderness, why it's sitting there like that, nobody really knows. Ironclads sail in the water. So why it's so far inland, why it's so far away from the river, it's almost like somebody picked it up and dropped it in the middle of the wilderness, far away from where it would be reasonable for it to be. The second point of interest is the Baron. The Baron of Greymar there's a lot of mystery surrounding him. He is incredibly ambitious. He has a cadre of people who surround him, who protect him. He has been known, he's incredibly wealthy. There's a mine just outside the city where he has been putting people to work but nobody knows what it is that he's trying to pull out of this mine. It's not clearly diamonds, it's not clearly coal. You've heard the phrase Blackstone, but people don't seem to be able to tell this, to distinguish between that and coal. The third is there is an indigenous tribe of lizard folk, for all intents and purposes, bipedal, reptilian, intelligent species of individuals to the west in what was called Sunfall Valley. They are, for all intents and purposes, extinct. However, that extinction event happened recently, say within the last 10 years. They went from flourishing and thriving to almost wiped out to an individual. Some think that it is in connection to that the Baron was responsible, but nobody has any definitive evidence to be able to pin it on him. So those are the three things that kind of stand out. This landlocked, ironclad derelict in the middle of the wilderness, the Baron of Greymar, who is, his city is advancing and he's incredibly ambitious and it's all happening very quickly, and what happened to this lizard folk tribe that went from surviving and flourishing, thriving to extinct within a span of 10 years. So for next time, we would want to think about how we know each other, how well we know each other, why we do things together, why we travel together, and then of those three things, points of interest, which everybody wants to explore.
Okay.
Sound good?
That's good.
Very.
Sounds good to me.
So that means we can call it here, and then we can pick up next time, and we can pick up with everybody, and we can rock and roll.
Excellent.
All right. Well, do we want to do? I know Patrick's got to go, so if you want to go ahead and do your own little like, where can we find you? What you do again? That would be great before you go, and then we'll round robin from there.
So, like I said in the intro, my name is Patrick Dubic. For those who just joined, I'm a creator, designer, owner of Big Byte Games. You can find me on Twitter under Patrick Dubuc. It's PATRICKDUBUC. And I am currently working on a TTRPG called Rock of Ages, which is basically described as sex, drug, rock and roll, and monsters. So it's a modern slash fantasy slash little bit gonzo game where people have to manage being a rock star and making your own career as a rock star, as well as fighting supernatural threats. That's all I'm going to say right now.
Catch me being
So,
a werewolf drummer.
why not? So that's about it for me. I guess I'll be leaving now, and wish you all like a great day. And I'll go run my errands right now.
Bye. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch
Bye,
you on the
Patrick.
next game.
Bye. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
All right. Whoever wants to go now, I'll send us off again.
You'll be the last to see. Okay. My name is Ellis Miller. I am known on YouTube and Twitter, Dungeon Bits. I make tutorial videos and other types of videos. Very recently uploading videos. There's not many to find on there yet, but I do make the likes of TTRPG and D&D content, and I have a plan to release 6 classes that I've been working on and get them all published with great art and all for you to access if you want to get the Malefactor, which is available on the DM's Guild. You can get it right now, and I'm looking to get my next class, the Incarnate, which is all about punching the crap out of your enemies without being a monk. Less martial arts and more just
Fascinating.
Superman. Um, and then a whole slew of classes after that. But apart from that, it's a like of TTRPG, not just D&D tutorial videos, but on Twitter and YouTube you can find me there. Dungeon bits, yeah.
Friends?
I'm Franz. You can find me at Planes of Fate on Twitter, and I'm writing my own game, Planes of Fate, and its first adventure, which is called Souls Fragments. And the game itself, and the adventure itself, uh, will take place in a fractured world that covers a lot of different genre, like steampunk, fantasy, and so on. Uh, that's basically it for me.
Um,
Like it.
yeah, I'm down. I am Craig, aka Tezrak. I'm Tezrak on Twitter. Uh, um, for as long as Twitter exists. And then we'll figure out. I just signed up for Mastodon, so dice.camp, and I'm Tezrak there too. Anyway, I am Craig Hatler Games. Craig Hatler Games is me. Keeping it real simple and straightforward. At the moment, it's Persona and Shadowlight, which you can find, pay what you want, Creative Commons on craighatler.itch.io, and just sort of jamming on that. And always happy to help as far as brainstorm, bounce ideas off of, read stuff to provide feedback for, playtest, the whole shebang. TTRPGs is pretty much 90% of my personality, so it infuses everything that I do. So that's me.
And can confirm, he is wonderful at it. He has play tested multiple games for us. He's played with us multiple times. Fantastic GM. I enjoy playing with him. I am just so lucky to be able to. Ours is not as simple, and I wish it was simpler. So I am Squidzy Corrosive Squid on Twitter. You can find me there. I do video game streaming, tabletop streaming. I also design tabletops with Lost Guide Games, which you can find that on itch.io. I know Nightbot's been spouting everything off over there. We also have coffee and a YouTube, Trauma Bond Studios. It's a whole big thing. And currently we're working on 2 games. Grim and Mimi, 2 of our designers, are working on Long Watch, which is a custom system used to replicate old school games, old school like video games. And then we're also working our asses off on Neon Shadows, which is a belonging outside of belonging narrative-based game with a card mechanic system rather than dice. So, with that, thank you guys so much for coming and watching. It is always such a good time. And I'm actually willing to go ahead and call this a character creation and then continue like with a 2-shot. But we'll talk about that in chat.
Yep.
So, thank you guys so much, and we'll catch y'all all next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.